recognizing kind of the difficult conversation that is, I want to spend just a little bit of time thinking about this. So here's the situation. Over time, Selena shares with you she's not very good at writing. She expresses concerns over how she'll make it in college and even reveals that she has bought some papers online before. In addition, she tells you she has no clue how to write a paper for class. She doesn't even know where to begin. And you mentioned, you think, how do I respond to this? You mentioned something about, well, you need to use APA style, like that's the first idea of academic writing. And her response is, what's that? She's never heard of it, okay? So, I want you to think, what kind of integrity issues do you see in this situation? What's going on here? What is Selena struggling with? What does she need? What might she need? Why is she buying papers online? What's lacking in her life? Yeah.
She might need some affirmation about her talents,
Yeah.
her areas of talent.
Maybe she feels like she's not a good writer. Maybe she went to a high-achieving high school and got poor grades. Maybe she went to a low-achieving high school and was never taught, didn't have good teachers. There's a whole wide range of things that might be happening, and she feels insecure about it. So that's one issue of integrity, is how confident is she? Other ideas? What else could be going on? Yeah.
She could have like a learning disability or something, like what is with that?
Definitely. Maybe she has a learning disability, diagnosed, undiagnosed. Maybe she doesn't want to share this, but she doesn't have to. But she's not sure where to go. Other ideas?
Maybe someone's just never taught her how to write a college paper. Well,
Yeah.
I know
Maybe-
they have to take freshman seminar, but
Yeah. Maybe it could be as simple as she simply doesn't know. A lot of people don't understand writing is a learned skill, especially academic writing. Not everybody is going to be New York Times bestseller, but anybody can learn to write well academically. It's almost like a scientific process. If you learn it, you can do it. Let's think of another question. What feedback might you give to Selena? Ideas? What else could you say besides how about you use APA style? Good answer. She said, how about you go to the Writing Center on campus to get help? You all know where I came from, right? What else?
share your own experience. When I came to college, I didn't know what a thesis was.
Yeah, definitely. Try to figure out, how can I relate? I didn't know what a thesis was. I thought the word discipline was when you got in trouble, right? Not math and science and English. There's a shift in vocabulary that happens from high school to college that a lot of people don't understand. That's a normal experience, and sharing that. Other ideas? What kind of feedback can you give? Yeah.
I'd probably refer to like the Purdue Owl or something online.
Great.
Online sources.
There are great online. We have the Writing Center, and I'll show you this in just a second. Writing Center has resources online. Purdue Owl, OWL stands for Online Writing Lab. Purdue Owl also has really excellent resources. If this is an issue of Selena is not being integratable because she doesn't know how to be integratable, maybe because she's never been taught, maybe because she's been lazy. Part of the solution to this will be, hey, let me connect you to resources on campus to help you learn and understand this. Any other thoughts on this? Feedback you might give to Selena? Yeah.
On AP, we also have a learning enrichment center that has writing tutors that can give her personal attention.
Definitely. Are they coming? Is the LAC coming today? Okay, that's great, which I'll just give a quick little plug for the Learning Enrichment Center, because what you guys need to know is how to connect students to resources. The Writing Center is going to be where you connect students to if they need writing support like this. Maybe there are issues, they're buying papers because they don't know how, or perhaps do you all work with international students, or are you all working just with students, American citizen students who thought
There
American?
are some sections that will have a heavy concentration in international students.
Okay.
So yes.
So another issue of academic integrity, if you're working with international students, in many cultural contexts around the world, it is considered honoring to use other people's work. And you don't have to cite it. It's not part of their academic systems. Neither good nor bad, but very different than what we do here in America, where you have to credit every single person, often in APA style, in a citation. The whole cultural format is very different. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that I won't get into, but that's something that you need to know how to make people aware of. Writing Center can support that. The Learning Enrichment Center can support maybe students who somebody mentioned learning disabilities. Also students who need enrichment tutoring, so not just people who maybe need to catch up, but also people who are ahead. The Learning Enrichment Center provides that. They also provide subject-specific tutoring. So if it's an issue where maybe they're not understanding concepts, our coaches will help with writing and writing style, and how do you get started, and how do you brainstorm, how do you revise, edit, and things like this. But maybe our coaches aren't going to understand biochemistry. We have one, but in the appointment with him, the content, we don't tutor in subject areas, but the LEC does. So that's a great resource to connect. Part of that is just knowing where can students go to get help. So what the Writing Center does, I just want to give you guys a brief understanding of this so that you know how to refer students if you identify issues of academic integrity like plagiarism or copying things or buying papers. How can you address this with your mentees? We offer one-on-one writing coaches. We have a staff of about 20 student and professional coaches who help students with any stage in the writing process. I'm hiring, I think, 12 undergrad coaches this year. We have 8 graduate coaches, and we have another 8 more professional staff that work in the Writing Center. We teach students to be better writers. So the difference in this and what you need to know about this is you can't just walk into the Writing Center, drop off a paper, and say, here, fix it, I'll be back in an hour. We don't use red pens. We actually don't even want red in the Writing Center because we believe writing is a process, and we want to teach you to be better writers. So say a paper comes in, you work with the coach, and that coach notices that maybe commas are a weakness for you. We have a handout, and we'll give you a handout that helps you understand what are rules for commas. We'll look at what's happening and maybe common errors you make and teach you to write rather than write for you. That's the kind of thing we'll do. We'll also, like if students come into the Writing Center, we want them to bring their assignment and bring an assignment so that we know what does the professor expect of you, and then bring what they've done so far. So another issue of academic integrity here might be a work ethic, as far as planning ahead, not procrastinating. Are you writing all your papers the night before? You can't take advantage of the Writing Center service because you can't get in because you don't have time. Helping students think through how to do this better so that they can develop the skills themselves to be successful in an academic setting. We help with any stage of the writing process. That comes from if there's a student, somebody mentioned, maybe they just don't know. Bring a paper in and say, I don't understand this assignment. Can you help me figure out what I need to do? We also have something called a Writer's Studio where students can sign up for 6 sessions with one tutor. They can work on a big assignment. So I have talked to numerous people who now are at the PhD level who, for whatever reason, they will say, I came into college and I did not know how to write. Maybe English wasn't their, right for an American audience. Maybe English wasn't their first language. Maybe their high school education, the writing piece of it, not real great. They knew they had some holes they needed to fill if they wanted to be successful at the university. Writing studios will help that and will help develop and create better writers. So that's another option that students have access to. All of this, by the way, is all free. So there shouldn't be any kind of, anything getting in the way in terms of access for all students to be able to have this kind of support. We also work with all levels of writers. So when I say developmental, I mean, just because maybe if your writing skills are weak, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not very smart, which people interpret that, and the insecurity we talked about, people might feel that way. That's not necessarily true. The writing skills need to be developed. And for you guys, helping the students that you're working with understand that. This isn't an issue, especially if their second language is English. I am 90% fluent in Spanish. If you put me in Costa Rica at a university, I would tank. And I have studied Spanish for 8 years, and I've taught Spanish for 8 years. If you heard me speak Spanish, you would say, wow, qué bueno que habla español, right? Okay? That's not the case. There's two kinds of English. There's a conversational English, there's an academic English. For students who English is their second language, they're doing something most of us don't have to, and it is hard. So finding support for that is important. It also does not mean they're not intelligent. It just means they're taking on something that's a lot harder than what many people take on. But we also work with advanced writers. So even if a student is a great writer, every writer needs a reader. And even the best authors out there have people reading their work. The great Narnia and Lord of the Rings comes from a writer's group called the Inklings. And it comes, and the quality of that literature exists in large part because the people got feedback on it. So people don't have to, our clients don't necessarily have to need to develop their writing to succeed. Anybody can come and get help. It may be something you guys want to do as well, to just say, I need feedback, I want to talk to somebody about my writing. Some resources you can see here. We have a bunch of handouts in the Writing Center. These are also all available online. You have access to them. If you go to our webpage, it's under our resources link. I brought some flyers that you can see. We have a brand new space this summer. We just moved in. The furniture is being moved in as we speak, and we're all really excited. We were doing happy dances this morning because we've been reading and waiting for furniture. And we have a great new space. We also have an office on West Campus in Building 1 down by the road, not up in Duke or anything, but so there's two places people can go. Our booking system is online, so if you go to our webpage, there's a big button that says book an appointment or make an appointment. You can sign up and do that. But then even there's help with APA style, all sorts of things under resources that if you don't have time to read, you can read the resources. Oh my God. Okay. We offer, like I talked about, peer writing coaches. This might be less intimidating for some students because we have undergrad students who we're just helping you talk through things. And so if somebody feels a little bit intimidated to come, there's lots of, we hire a wide array of majors. I have, obviously I have some English majors, but I have a biochem major, I have a nursing major, I have theology and philosophy. We have people from many backgrounds who work in the Writing Center to be able to help all students at AP because writing is important for everybody. Everyone will graduate and probably need to write an email at some point that makes sense. So as basic as that, many people will go on to use writing in a far more complex manner, but everybody needs basic writing skills to be a professional. We also offer workshops. This could be another thing you recommend to students. Maybe the one-on-one feels a little bit much, but you can go to an online workshop or you can come to an in-person workshop. This will help introduce students to different qualities that you need to become an excellent writer. So, questions about resources? Anything like this? Yeah.
How long would you recommend a student should make an appointment in advance?
Oh, you know, at peak times in the semester, we're going to be busy.
Okay.
So if people, like, making an appointment ahead of time is important. I will say if students miss 3 sessions, they can't use the Writing Center for the rest of the semester. So if they schedule it and don't show, that's a problem, and they lose Writing Center privilege because Friday, you probably will get in. So it really depends on the point in the semester, but I mean, again, with an issue of academic integrity, a basic one being organization, encouraging students to think through, are you organized? How are you approaching what you do? Are you thinking ahead? Because a lot of this stuff at the level we're working at requires something. Other questions?
You can book online, book an appointment online. Can you also make an appointment in person?
Yes. And if people aren't comfortable booking online, I'm sorry, I didn't finish that thought. We're in the west wing of Marshburn Library. You know where the old one was? Just come in and there's a sign that keeps pointing you. We have a great view of the Turtle Pond. So that's another great, and the main office is in Marshburn Library. So that's where you go to make an appointment. Though building one on West Campus, you can also go to. We'll have some around. Other questions? Okay, key things to remember. I said this before, every writer needs a reader. And encouraging this idea for whatever stage people are at, for yourselves, for the students you work with. And also remember, we work with any student and we work with any project in any major and any stage. We do, and I will highlight there, as far as any student, we have ESL specialists who can also work with students for whom English is their second language. Right now, I would encourage you to get on, like us on Facebook. We're AP Writing Center, or if you're a Twitter person, you can go there as well. What this does, if you're active on social media, it keeps us in your active memory. Like, oh yeah, there's a Writing Center. And I won't be offended if you do that now, because I know if you wait, you'll forget. So that's basic introduction to what we do. Our writing, or our website is pretty straightforward as far as what's there. The big parts of it that you'll use is making an appointment and resources will be the most helpful for you.
Thank you so much, Jody.
Bird, Katie, to talk to you a little bit about the first year seminar and some of the logistics for that course.
Okay, I have a handout going around that will give you, I just call it like FYS basics, specific to this group. And in the next little while before lunch, I just want to talk more about like the expectations. My goals are, this down, mostly to talk about the relationship of APEX to first year seminar. Talk to you a little bit about what faculty have heard and what faculty might be expecting, and then to talk about what students might be expecting. Because just a show of hands, how many of you were involved in the Alpha program here? Not as many as I thought. Okay, so Alpha is a peer mentoring kind of community group program that most all of our new freshmen get connected to at freshman orientation. So if you're a transfer student, you might or might not have any involvement with Alpha. They do have a specific transfer type approach that has specific Alpha mentors attached to it. But Alpha has been going for many, many, many years. The goal for Alpha is definitely about community support and identification with APU and Cougars and move-in day and orientation and all those things. So as the history part of the handout will show, what has been kind of a missing piece, many have thought at APU, is more of an introduction to life of the mind, student identities as scholars and learners, as well as Cougars. So that was part of how first year seminar came about. Formally, it just started being developed about a year ago. Plans were in place before that. APEX sort of joined the set of programs associated with first year seminar last fall, and it's kind of evolved. So we're just launching, as you know, this year. So everything is under development, and that's really important for you to know. What I'm going to talk about today is kind of the expectations that faculty have gotten about APEX, because APEX has been identified as the academic peer mentor program. If you think about APU and the cornerstone of scholarship is probably the one most connected to APEX. So as you have your 10 hours a week, 6 of those are the one-to-one, and that is definitely the heart of the APEX program. And if faculty ever get in conversations with you about that, that's definitely what Tracy and Alex have presented to them as the one-to-one being the main part, but there is this connection to a classroom that's really different than Alpha or D groups or the spiritual mentoring that APU does. And so what you'll be doing in class will vary probably pretty considerably from instructor to instructor. So at this point you have, each class is 55 minutes long. Faculty were told that you would be coming to all the classes so you'd be able to really connect with the students both in a classroom, academic peer mentoring, in addition to one-to-one. Reading books, so you'll know what's going on in the class, and be able to answer kind of questions that your mentees might come to you with, and then doing that kind of reading. You're not supposed to be doing any activities for class outside of like that meeting you have with a faculty member up to an hour a week. So no grading papers, no preparing exercises, nothing that we would normally associate with a teaching assistant, but you will be in class, and the intention is for you to be an active participant in that class, so that it'll look different. So I just wanted to share some of the topics that will be first year seminar. Each student, when they were admitted to APU, got to choose and rank order 3 different themes that were selected out of focus groups with different people on campus. So those are beauty and meaning, faith, doubt, and reason, and global citizenship. Okay, but the topics under those themes will vary a lot, and students will not typically know their specific topic until their first day of class. So some will be like, wow, I've always wanted to learn, like history of film or rock and roll or whatever. And others will be like, oh my gosh, I have to learn about science and society, and that isn't what I thought, I was majoring in. So there might be some real variation with that, and I would just encourage you this afternoon when you meet your faculty member to get their syllabus as soon as possible so you know what the specific requirements are for their classes. Okay, any questions so far? Yes?
So how many sections are there then?
That is a great question. 50 total. And most of them have around 23 or 24 students. Some are a little smaller. That's the max.
Did all the faculty members volunteer to be
Yes.
part of this program?
Yeah, and they're nearly all, I think right now our mix is 24 full-time, 17 adjunct, and then we have several, kind of what we call academic administrators also teaching. The main thing was to have a strong connection to APU. So like Keith Hall, who was here earlier, is teaching, Tracy Bird is teaching, Melissa Stavas, some of you might know her, is teaching, she works at Cum University, Michelle Laporte from Service Learning, Stephanie Arona from Orientation and Transitions. So they all have different topics.
And you.
And me, yes. Two sections. So we're really excited about it. We are just kind of, I'd say at this point, very prayerfully anticipating how all the pieces are going to fit together. Because another part of the first year seminar was that the alpha groups were, and this has changed in the last couple days as we're all dealing with schedules. Apex and Alpha were all part of a plan to be a coordinated team of each first year seminar section. Because of scheduling, they had all the Alpha groups all of them needed to form as part of orientation. So as soon as students arrived at APU, they were placed in an Alpha group. Now, because a lot of the freshmen have had to change their schedules, as many of you have to change your schedules, I'd say we're still probably around 90%, but we can't guarantee that every student in first year seminar is part of the same. And we thought we were going to have like 2 or 3 alpha groups per section of like between 8 and 10 students each. And now some of that has changed a little bit. So you're really going to be part of the team, not only with the faculty, but with the alpha group leaders. And like I said, they're going to be more about the group. They are also required to do one-to-one, so some of the same one-to-one topics might come up in alpha that come up with you all, but your focus again is more on the academic. Okay. So I'm just going to share some of the topics so you will get a sense of how different some of them are. So we have one on how do you know a saint when you see one, Lives of the Saints, conflict management, the power of story, finding your life purpose, world changers and difference makers. Both myself and Gary Black are doing that. Thriving, which fits a lot with what you're doing here. Tracy Burke, Sociologically Examined Life. We have a couple that have up to half international students, and those are cross-cultural and communicative competence and language me&d, which is all about how different languages express different values across cultures. thinking globally, science and global citizenship, contemplative prayer and reflection, holistic wellness, thinking globally, which is one where you take, like, let's say the ISIS type crisis in the Middle East and look at how different world newspapers are treating and addressing that story. So as you can imagine, the sections are going to look really different and the expectations will be different. So every section, to keep some sense of coherence and consistency, will have 2 required assignments. And one of them is the momentum assignment that we're talking a lot about here that focuses specifically on a student at the end of their time at APU reflecting back on what made their experience worthwhile. So it's really intended to work with all that momentum, self-awareness type material that you all are looking at, as well as really connecting students if they're interested in studying abroad to that office. Research with faculty, leadership experiences, musical participation, athletics, anything along those lines, we really want students to be imagining and connecting with as early as possible. Food and food justice is another topic. Spiritual care for health professionals is probably the one that's most focused on an academic area, but most all the sections have a combination of majors and a combination of different kinds of backgrounds, academic skill levels, things like that. So lots to keep in mind. So the kinds of things that students are probably going to be looking for help with in addition to momentum are things like how do they choose a topic for their research paper. We will have librarians coming into each of the sections, kind of guiding them through the library websites, but that might be something they ask you all about. They also are going to be required to turn in at least 2 drafts of their research paper, so just talking about how do you kind of pace yourself. As you learn academic writing, what is scholarly communication about? For some of the classes, they will be doing oral assignments, so they might ask for help, like how do you plan to do a presentation? How do you organize your thoughts around that? For others, I think they might just be like, how do you journal? Several of the instructors are wanting students to complete journals every week to start the scaffolding assignments too. So lots of variation. I would say connect often with your faculty member. It's already written in for once a week, but if you have questions, definitely let them know and feel free to ask Tracy, Alex, any of us for any kind of support you might need. I think one of the big questions is going to be, and I think it was helpful just following Jody, when do you actually need to refer for tutoring and to the Writing Center rather than addressing those academic type skills on your own? So any questions on that? If you run into scheduling issues, definitely talk with your instructor about how they want to handle those. Like I said, I think your participation is going to really vary. I think that a lot, because 23-24 is still kind of a large seminar size, there might be requests to do small groups, again, meet with students who might be struggling a little more even during the class, that kind of thing. So any other questions? Are you all excited about seeing what topic you get? Yeah. So they're very excited to meet you. Music and math. I mean, there's so many different topics. So at this point, I don't think, and Tracy can speak to this too, I don't think we necessarily organized Apex or Alpha Leaders according to topic. So you might end up being like, oh wow, I am a health professional, but I'm in this other topic. But that was all related to scheduling. Nearly all of this ones. Yes, I have several questions. Back there.
This is a little off topic, but
Yeah.
does being an Apex mentor count towards service credits?
It does not, because you are being compensated with a tuition scholarship. So it isn't, because there's compensation, it can't be counted as service credits.
Good question.
The Alpha Leaders are also required to attend these as well, or it's?
No, they're more the and that's the tricky. Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that. At this point, the Alpha Leaders, as you might or might not know, are not compensated at all, and their role is considered more community and group focused. So your students, and this is where even I think we'll probably talk about this more later. Your students might be really overwhelmed, especially the first few weeks, by the number of meetings and groups they're being invited to attend, because Alpha is still weekly. It's a student life program that's been running for years, so they're weekly. Their goals are gonna focus more on, I mean, similarly in terms of transition, but like connecting in the community as a group. And so you all probably, if you weren't involved with that, you've seen the leaders with the signs this week, and like the group of like 8 students behind them, that's sort of like the Alpha Aura. I mean, that's like, you have the groups, they just spent like a week serving together in the Bay Area. I mean, they're very much about service and community service. So on your handout, on the Beyond the Classroom assignments, that's how Alpha and Apex are being, or have been. I mean, we've done some variations. We have more recent syllabi that aren't as specific around Apex. I just don't know. I mean, I reviewed syllabi mostly in August last month, and we've had some changes since then. So in terms of different versions of syllabi, yours might not look just like this, but that's kind of the general idea. So Alphas, some instructors are getting them booked, so again, they can kind of follow what's happening in the seminar. But if we did the cornerstones again, they're more about the community than about the scholarship. But like this afternoon, we're going to be giving all the faculty members the contact information for Alpha as well as Apex, with the expectation that Apex will be attending class and Alpha will not.
I was just thinking about something in response to Jasmine's question. And so I will look into the time that you guys would spend assisting with Azoo Safari, the Majors Fair, or if you attend City Links with your class, because that's not actually required of you. It's something that we hope that you would want to do. But it's my thought that we could try to see if that at least would count as a service credit. So I will look into that. It's a very good question. Yeah.
I don't know if this is more a question for you or for Alex or Tracy, but in regards to scheduling the meetings with your students, if they are not proactive about scheduling those or meeting with you or showing up to those, are we supposed to be really like tenacious in trying to get to them, or is there a point where you just like say, okay, I get that you don't want to?
I'm going to defer to Tracy and Alex on that one.
If they don't show up, then they didn't show up. And if part of their grade is 6 meetings with you.
Yeah,
So
and they're
if
like
they
1.5 points each.
Yes.
So it's not a ton, but
It's
still
not a
part of their
ton,
grade.
but if they, as a student and as an adult, choose to not show up to some meetings that will impact their grade, and ultimately not showing up, like that's their prerogative. If they don't have 6 meetings by the end, they don't have 6 meetings, and they can't cram all of them they can't just show up every day for the last week. Like that's not gonna count. It has to be every 2 weeks. So if they don't show up in those first 2 weeks for meeting 1, they missed out on meeting 1.
So what I would say with that too is that in this first 2 weeks, it's going to be really crazy, guys. And there are going to be a lot of students who don't know what's going on, and they have this meeting and that meeting. And so I think that we might have to have some flexibility.
Yeah.
Our hope is that they all meet in this first 2 weeks. And if they don't, but they've tried or there was confusion, I mean, that's where you talking with Alex, and just really doing that first check-in, we'll be able to see if it was just they ignored it or they tried it or couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And so we'll have that 2-week time period set up for you to keep giving attempts to talk to them. And I think that for you, if you wanted to be tenacious enough to send them an email and say, we were supposed to meet this a couple of weeks ago and you never scheduled. So really hoping that you're planning on scheduling a meeting with me. Would you like to talk? I think that one follow-up email would be probably good. It would show that as a mentor you care that they didn't meet that time with you. But I don't think that you have to go chase them.
It's going to be a case-by-case basis. So if you're experiencing having a student who is being unresponsive or not showing up, that's when you would come and contact me and we can talk through, what you've done, what isn't working, maybe what is a better approach to this. Because this is about student success and caring about them. So yes, of course, apply grace. But if someone doesn't show up the entire semester and then they want to cram in 6 meetings at the end, that's also where you kind of hold them accountable to their actions.
And all of the students that are in our session are our mentees.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I know there are lots of hands which I love, because this is probably one of the more confusing parts of the whole thing. in terms of grading, 70% of the class grade belongs to the faculty, and we had some minimums around what the research and momentum papers would be, because those are the two that are required across. But 30% is what we're calling beyond the classroom. I think that's what most people are calling it. And so that includes all the APEX meetings, all the Alpha weekly group meetings that they're tracking, and 3 different events. So one of them is a Zoo Safari. One of them is a Strengths Week event like Keith is talking about. And then the other is CityLink. So technically for their grades, and you'll see this on the syllabi, most of them, 9% of the grade is APEX. So that's 1.5 points per meeting, so 6 times 1.5 is 9. And then the other 9 is Alpha, and then it's 4 points each for those 3 events. So it ends up totaling 30. So, okay, other questions? Yes?
I have 2 questions. So say they're having, a few students are having scheduling conflicts and 3 of them want to meet for the same hour. Are we able to be flexible with that and approve that as a meeting for them, or how are we working on that group thing?
Great question.
If it has to be that way, then that's something that we would want you to use your judgment on. The one thing that we are primarily aiming for, though, with the APEX program is that it will be a one-on-one time that one person spends to invest in one other person, their unique situation, their unique concerns. So I would almost think that if that becomes an issue, and there really aren't times that they could meet with you individually, we have a couple of people in our office that we are going to have assisting if there are students who need additional support and it doesn't fit maybe in your schedule to be able to do it within your 10 hours. So I would say talk with Alex about that if that seems like it's going to be an issue. And it may evolve to a point where this program would be more like meeting with more than one person at a time. But really the intent is to try to see what this looks like for each student, each incoming freshman, to have that one-on-one care, that one-on-one touch point that they're not getting anywhere else on campus. So kind of aim for that, but it's not like you can't do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, if you end up in that situation, that's something that I would see is, and we definitely talk with Tracy and Alex, and also just for the Alpha. I mean, like, if you're not necessarily sensing that those students need the one-to-one, I mean, the Alpha leaders are another source of that kind of personal support and mentoring.
Yeah.
So it's the team approach. Yeah. Yes. Or both of you, yeah. Or Pamela, why don't you go first? That's fine.
Okay, I have a quick question. So because they're one-to-one meetings, does that mean that they have to be in person? Or can we utilize technology to speak with them? Like if we want to Skype them or FaceTime them or talk to them on the phone for the hour where you're still one-on-one, but if they can't like come down and actually meet with you and sit across from you, would you be open to doing it electronically?
I think that's something that we need to talk about more because the intention is, again, one-on-one meetings in person, and it is just for the 30 minutes. So hopefully finding a time when they're on campus where they can meet before or after a class or something like that. Again, we wouldn't say no technology, but the purpose of this is to have them connect as effectively as possible with a person. And I would say, just based on my experience, that happens more effectively, more often, face-to-face than it does via technology. That's the only option, though, then we would want you to use that rather than nothing at all. So
Yeah, so once again, case by case basis.
Yep.
If you find yourself in that sort of situation, call me, beat me if you want to reach me. And
yeah.
My question was, you said that in the FYS seminars, you were going to be sitting down and participating with the students, but I just want to clarify what exactly our roles are in those classroom environments, and like, what are our duties to do in that class?
Yeah, Tracy on this.
We were really sensitive to that and trying to mesh the APEX program with the first year seminar objectives. And so that's where you and your individual faculty member you think about one-on-one interactions, for some people it's more comfortable than it would be doing something in a group or teaching or leading a discussion. So that would be something that I think the faculty want to get to know you. They want to know what your strengths are and what your capabilities are. You know, and if you're not comfortable facilitating a discussion, then that's something that you and a faculty member can work out. And it is my sense, and I think Katie could probably speak into this too, but it's my sense that the faculty will respect that about you because they're really excited to work with you. So if some of you love talking and you love doing group stuff, then that's something that you might bring to the class, but if you don't, then it's not something that you would be expected to do.
Yeah, and I would say, I'm just gonna be completely transparent here, that is the question. I mean, faculty are asking the same question, because you all are such good students and you have such full lives, so they really don't wanna burden you in any way. And they want you, they really see the value of peer mentoring, but what that looks like in each class, they could be asking you as much as you asking them, what do you wanna do? So I just thought of this as you all were talking. If you all could even think, just like imagine yourself in a classroom with like 20 first-year students, based on your strengths, based on your giftings, what would you like that to look like? I can see a lot of times like a faculty member might be talking like critical thinking. It's a great example because that's a huge part of first-year seminar. They could say, oh, Pamela, so how do you define critical thinking? Could you give me an example of a class where you had to stretch and do critical thinking? Or let's say you have students going, oh my gosh, there's no way I can keep up with the reading. They might be, like, Rebecca, tell us how you manage your reading. So faculty might call on you or look for a student voice in that kind of conversation. I think that's really normal. I know like Sharon McCatherine is doing music and math, and they're going to be creating musical instruments and like playing, and they have we had to get them a special classroom so they wouldn't disturb other people. And so she's going to want you to be making music and like stretching creatively. Jeff Boyan is all about imagination, and so he's going to want his Apex mentor to feel free to just like engage and create. So it's going to be very cool, very different, and that's where I just absolutely agree with what Tracy said. We don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. But that's going to be that is going to be a conversation, and I can pretty much guarantee you faculty are going to be wondering as much as you are. What kind of match are you all going to have, and what's going to work best in the classrooms? We're very, very, very clear about no rating, no like lab assistant, nothing that would be like traditional teaching assistant, but you are going to be sitting in the class. So that's going to be the navigation of how you work together. Does that make sense? Because they're definitely asking the same. And I think exactly what Tracy said, it's like so going to depend on what you bring to the classroom as well as what their topic is, and that's why I pray this afternoon that we all get along and are living happily ever after. It's going to be a big reveal. Back there, and then we'll come back.
Are we expected to give them our phone number so they have it if they...
We have prepared to give them your email address, and it will be up to you how much telephone information you want to give, or if you're comfortable with texting, or if they're comfortable with texting. So basically this afternoon, when we give you some envelopes where we've prepared some information for you, we will have your name and just a little bit of information about you for you to be able to share with your faculty member. Okay, but we intentionally did not include your phone number, so that could be something that you guys can decide this afternoon when you talk with them.
More questions? Yeah.
As far as getting the numbers of our mentees, like how the alphas pretty much like your alpha emails like numbers and not text you about the meetings and stuff, how formal or informal should that process be? Because I don't know, I feel like a lot of, maybe some students don't respond to an email because it is a very formal method that if you want to get to know them more, maybe, meeting at this time,
Or even if they're late, that's something, and again, I defer to Tracy now, something that we talked about a little bit was just sort of like, even if a student is really late, just to text them like, we missed you, is everything okay, kind of text we're thinking with you all.
I am hoping that there's just a chance during the first class meeting, whether it's on Wednesday or Friday of this week, that you guys would be able to, if you want to get the phone number from your students, or if they want to share that with you, maybe that could be something that's sent around, because we haven't, intentionally share the phone numbers with you, because we have to look up and see which students might have FERPA holds, and then ask them if it's okay for someone to have their phone number. So it really would just be, I think, in that first class meeting, a good thing for you to just maybe ask your faculty member, you know, do you mind if I send something around and see if students want to share their phone number with me so that we can connect more easily to schedule? That's probably how I would handle that.
Yeah.
Right here, there's two questions.
Yes, okay, I'll go there.
So I guess like my question is like, if a student is like really late, like 15 minutes out of the 30, like does that affect
That's a good
like
question.
grading? Am I supposed to wait at, you know?
Yeah, that's a
Six
great
hours.
logistics question.
You will have a form, that feedback form, that tells you when the meeting took place and how long it was. And so for you, I would just note that on that feedback form, because you're going to get credit for having been available. Even if a student doesn't show up, then you can submit the feedback form, and we want to know that the student didn't come.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if they want to, like if something came up and they want to reschedule, is that something?
That's, okay,
Yeah,
so
how does that work?
if they never show up, that you would consider that a no-show. If
Okay.
they text you or call you and say like, oh, this came up, can I reschedule? Then you guys would, you know, if you're able to reschedule in that 2-week timeframe, you go ahead and reschedule, or maybe you have an hour-long meeting at the beginning of the next one, so it's kind of like doubling up. It's really gonna be up to, like Tracy said earlier, your guys' better judgment, and you have questions about any kind of situation like that, you can always come to me.
Yeah, and you guys need to be pretty, I mean, I'm just thinking, because again, we so want to protect your time too, that if you're waiting like 15, 20 minutes and nobody comes, then they're gonna, then I think we need to send a message to students too, that then they're not gonna get their 1.5 points of credit. And I don't want any of you, I mean, this is where boundaries, if you all have ever worked with mentoring or youth groups or things like that before, boundaries are really important, and our first year students just don't know, I mean, because I've done heart-to-heart for years, like you run into this, that they just don't really think that you have a lot of other things you could be doing sometimes, because they know you're in this role for them.
Yeah.
And so they really do. I mean, you know. So protect your time, but I mean, you go to Alex and Tracy, and I do think, like, if somebody is 15 minutes late, I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, if it's only a half-hour meeting, and with the kind of prompts and the kind of really meaningful relationships this is intended to have, you know, I just think that makes
And that could be, you know, situational. Someone texts you and they're like, hey, I'm sick with the flu and I'm vomiting and I can't come to our meeting, you know, maybe that's a reschedule. But if someone is late and it's the first meeting, okay, well, it's the first meeting, there's all these meetings, they're overwhelmed, maybe we have a little bit of grace. If they do it again,
Yeah.
they're losing credit.